I want everyone in here to stand up on your feet and welcome, give a big Birmingham welcome to Tom Krol.
Okay, everybody. Bam! And the easy PowerPoint. You guys are going to see I don't speak much, and what an awesome introduction from Brian. So thank you very much. He did ask me to come up, and he saved my behind in Orlando. We had a little hiccup, and Brian spoke and did an excellent job. So I'm happy to be here with you tonight. We'll just set some of the rules of engagement and some of the groundwork right out of the gate. I really do believe in the concept of go-giving, so I am here to serve you guys. I'm a servant to you guys. My obligation as a coach, I take it very, very seriously, is to provide you actionable information that you can implement right now to create revenue. That's what I'm here for. That's my purpose in life. I really believe that that's God's purpose in my life, which is more important than discipline and passion, which run out really, really quick. But purpose is the key here. So I'm here to serve you guys. So if you have questions, if there's anything that I say that you disagree with, because some of the stuff I'm going to tell you about is a little controversial, it may be opposite of what you've learned or know about wholesaling, let me know. And we'll stop and I'll answer your questions, and we'll stay until 3 o'clock in the morning if we have to, but don't let Brian hear that. So let's get started. So who am I? My name is Tom Krol. I am the founder of Wholesaling Inc. Wholesaling Inc. is, we focus on wholesaling. That's what we do. But who cares about me? You guys are the hero of the story, not me. I'm just here to help you avoid some of the black eyes and bruises and bumps that you get along the way. So my story, just real quick, is like most people, I started from rock bottom. It's a strong foundation so all you guys who raised your hand who are just starting right now to do wholesaling, awesome right there. You guys, if you are struggling and you're paycheck to paycheck, or if you were mowing lawns for a living and you got fired when you were wearing your Tommy Bahama socks in the office, because then you're just like me. So rock bottom is a strong foundation. It is, I believe, the strongest foundation. If you took my top 100 or 200 students, there are some common threads or commonalities that run amongst them, and certainly starting at rock bottom is most definitely a commonality with all of my top students. So I love it. I'm not embarrassed about that at all. Why did wholesaling work for me when I got started? What I'm going to start to give you now is some information that you can really utilize and implement. So 3 things that I've identified when I first started that made a difference for me personally, because I had a lot of problems. I was poor, I was paycheck to paycheck, I'd gotten fired from doing lawn care. I do not, by the way, I live in Florida, I do not have the body type for lawn care. Just so you guys know, if there's any confusion, I'm not that good at it, which is why I was fired. But came home one day, my wife, who is somewhere out there, I got fired, she was crying, we didn't know whether we should buy groceries or pay the mortgage, so things were really, truly tough. And I called my brother Todd Toback, he's my stepbrother, which is why we have different last names, and I told him I got fired. And I asked him, can you help me put a resume together to get another job that I could get fired from? And, and he said, no, you blankety blank, I want you to finally get into wholesaling. So here's what I knew about Todd, and this is what I really want you guys to hear. Todd, I knew, was a multimillionaire. And that was one of the key reasons why I made the decision. So when you choose somebody to work with, and you guys are so blessed to have Brian here. I've never seen somebody come into an industry on fire in my life. Go ahead, come up? Am I not loud enough? Bring it up. Okay, is that better? Terrific. So 3 things that you need when you decide to get into real estate investing, when you want to pick who you're going to work with. And by the way, there is absolutely nothing for sale. I am not selling you guys anything. Here's what you want. Number 1, most important, you need to make sure that you trust the person you're learning from. What does trust look like? Trust means that you trust means that they have your best interest. So if you meet somebody and they're constantly selling you, that's a red flag right there, number one. Number two is you have to know that they're actually who they are. A lot of people in our industry, you guys would be surprised, who talk about real estate. No good. So you have to make sure that you trust him. That's why I worked with Todd, because I knew he had my best interest at heart. He was tough, but I knew who he was. Second reason why wholesaling works, or why real estate investing works, is you have to make sure you believe in the system. So if you believe in the mentor, but you're really kind of in your gut, you're like, people don't really sell houses for 40 and 60 cents on the dollar. It just doesn't make sense. This is not for you. You can leave the room right now, because it's not going to work. If you, in your belly, you don't believe that people sell their homes for 40 to 60 cents on the dollar, real estate investing is going to be a massive challenge that you may not be successful in. So you have to have that second belief. So first belief is in the person you're learning from. Second belief is in my case, wholesaling, or in your case, flipping if you're learning from Brian, and wholesaling, right, Brian? All right, perfect, and wholesaling. So you have to have a belief that people do sell at a discount. And the third belief system, and you guys, beliefs are so important, because a lot of people, you've heard this idea that the predecessor to every action is a thought. Well, that's true, but you really can't change your thoughts. It's very difficult, but what you can change is your belief system. Really, the saying should be, the predecessor of every thought is a belief. So it all starts with what you believe. So if you don't believe Brian, if he's not a good guy, and you don't believe that wholesaling works and people sell at a discount, it's not going to work. Third belief is the one that most people struggle with. It's what I struggled with up until the time I was 33. And you have to have a belief in yourself. So a lot of people feel like, well, they can do it, but they're smarter. I mean, I know I certainly felt that way. You were looking at a guy who my nickname was 990, because that's what I got on my SAT. So if I didn't break 1,000 and I can do this, you guys can absolutely do this. So no worries there. So those are the three things that you want to look for when you make a decision to jump. And Tony Robbins teaches us that decisions are made in an instant, right? So if you believe in the person you're learning from, you believe in the system, that it does work, that you have proof in your belly, you believe it, and you believe in yourself, that's the key. And surprisingly, the third one is the biggest struggle. Okay, so here is why I also have kind of broken down why I succeeded and why a lot of my students succeed. I attribute the majority of my success to tithing. I'm not here to sell you guys on Christianity. I'm a Christian, but I will tell you that when I was struggling, one of the first things that Todd did with me is Todd would, first of all, he was a very mean coach. If I asked him any questions, he would hang up on me. He would tell me not to ask him questions. He would call me every name in the book if I questioned his authority, which is very tough as he was my older brother, so there's a little competition there. But he brought me to a Sean Terry. You guys probably heard of Sean Terry. He's now a friend of mine, which is amazing. But Sean is a great guy. And one of the first things that Sean taught me in Atlanta was, I got there to wholesale and I was totally broke, and Todd paid for everything, and Sean got up there and for hours he was going on about tithing. And he was talking about a book called The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. If you guys have not read it, I very strongly encourage you to buy the book tonight and read it. Don't listen to it on Audible. Absolutely read it. It's a small little tiny book. Don't believe anything your teachers told you when you were growing up that you're an Audible learner. You're not an Audible learner. You can read a book. It's possible. So just read the book. It builds new brain muscle. You're going to love it. So tithing is the key. So tithing, you guys, I will tell you, this is why I knew I was forgetting something. I'll tell you a funny quick story. My wife and I drove here. I say because she doesn't like to fly. But that's not true exactly. I'm not a big flyer. But on our way up, we have a 19-year-old son, Logan, and right before we left, he handed me this stack of cash. It looks like a lot of money, but it's not. It's only $200, which I don't know why it's in singles, but I'll ask him that later. But so he handed me this money, and I said, Logan, I said, what is this money for? And he said, Dad, he said, oh, I've been working, I got a job, I work at a restaurant now, and these are my tips, and I want to give 10%, to our home church. So bring this back and donate it. And you guys, I can't tell you, that's like what you do, everything you do has generational consequences. And I am telling you, I was not tithing up until the time I was 33, and I started, and you guys can read about it in Malachi. It's chapter, I think, 3, verse 8, and it talks about if you don't tithe, you're stealing from God and you're under a curse. I'll leave it at that. So first thing out of the gate is pick a person that you trust and somebody, and you guys are blessed with Brian right here. Make sure you trust yourself and make sure you trust the system and start tithing. Second thing about wholesaling and why it worked for me is, and this is so key, and I heard Brian say it earlier, progress, not perfection, is the ultimate guide to wholesaling and all forms of real estate investing. I can take every single person who didn't raise their hand in this group who is a seasoned investor, and I guarantee you, I will bet my annual income on it that their first deal was totally sloppy. They made every mistake in the book. You hear it every single time you talk to anybody, right? There we go. So they'll make every mistake in the book. When you guys make a decision that you're going to do it, it's going to be sloppy. Stop learning and start earning. It's all about getting out there and getting results. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. But you guys should have this. All of my students, I get pictures all the time. They have this right above their desk. Progress, not perfection. It's one of the core tenets of what we call being a rhinoceros, which comes from the book Rhinoceros Success, which I also recommend that you guys read. By the way, guys, you'll see on here is reading. I will tell you one of the other reasons why I did so well and I had explosive results out of the gate is I started reading. Up until the time I was 33, I had read exactly one book. It was Dr. Dolittle in junior high. That is it. And that is not a lie or an exaggeration. That is absolutely the truth. At this point now, not only have I read multiple books, but I'm friends with most of the authors, which is just incredible to be able to do that in such a short amount of time. One of the books I got from Sean Terry was Rhinoceros Success. I'm now friends with Scott Alexander. And he was kind of the concept of the tribe and the rhinos and what we talk about on Wholesaling Inc. The other thing I want to talk about why I was successful, we're going to get into the granular details like lists and strategies, but I want to give you guys a few concepts that just kind of wake up early in the morning and sit, either alone and meditate or in your prayer closet if you do that, but just kind of think about these concepts. The other one is what I'm going to call motivation. You'll hear a lot of people talk about time management. I am here to tell you guys right now, there is no such thing as time management. It doesn't exist. In the amount of time that I've been up here, the same exact amount of time has passed for me as it has for all of you. So the only difference is what I would call motivation. So one thing I used to do that I don't do anymore because my attorney tells me not to, but I'll tell you guys, is I used to always pretend with my students, I would say, well, pretend you have children and they're kidnapped. And you're busy and you have a busy lifestyle. I guarantee you that there's no such thing as time management, but there is priority management. You would drop everything, you would skip meals, you would wake up early, you would stay up late. If you didn't have the money, you would find it. If you didn't have the resources, you would find it because you want it that bad, right? So the kidnapper calls and says, hey, I've got your little girl, I've got your little boy. The ransom is you got to go out and find a motivated seller, and I'm going to talk about how to do that in a minute. You can do it if you put that in your belly. And you really believe it. If you put that, I don't want to give you guys anxiety, but you have to understand that if you don't have it, it's because you don't want it. And it's so true. I went through so long of not understanding this concept. There's no such thing as time management, only priority management. And if you guys want more clarity on that, just go back. You want to know what's important to you? Go back and see where you spent your time. Where does your time go? You'll know your priorities. Just look at where it goes. Just go back to the last 3 months, 6 months, and you'll know exactly what's important to you. So I know it's a silly little concept, but sometimes that's just the push somebody needs when they're a new student and they're right on the precipice. So I really encourage you to try to understand the concept of, sometimes a student will call and, I can't manage my time. It's not a time management problem, it's a priority management problem. And if you have a job, hopefully by doing that, you'll get fired. That would be the best thing that could happen. I know, I'm not supposed to say that either, but I'm going to tell you that thank God I got fired, and I really mean that. If you have a job, they'll take you back, believe me. Believe me. So that's it. One other thing before we get into the kind of the granular detail is reading. I just already brought it up. I can't tell you how important this is. You guys, every single person that is in the 1% reads. Every single person who's in the 1% reads. Every single one. There's not an exception. I'm going to say it one more time. Every single person who's in the 1% financially reads. So I really want to impress upon you, if you want to make a change right now, stop listening. You can listen to Audible. Audible's great, by the way. I listen to Audible. My wife wants to kill me on those long drives because she's got all these people in her ear. But you can listen to Audible. It's great. But all this idea of like all these teachers telling people that kids can't read and they're visual learners and audio, that may be true, but if you can read a sign, you can read a book. What I encourage all my students to do, get a book, any book that you like. There's tons. I would recommend anything by Robert Kiyosaki or any of the other great guys and girls out there. All of these men and women have come before us. The Bible teaches us, guys, there is nothing new under the sun. They've come before us. All the answers are there. Don't be a trailblazer. This is something I learned from another author who I'm actually friends with also. His name is Orrin Woodward. He's a personal friend of mine. He taught me this. Be a leader, not a bleeder. You don't have to be a trailblazer. The most successful people are not trailblazers. They follow the path that's before them. So it goes all the way back to a ton of books. If you have struggle, if you believe that you get tired when you read, or you lose your place when you read, or you lose focus and you can't read, or you told you can't read, what I do is you get a book, you get a little sticky pad, and you put every 8 pages, just count physical pages. And I know this sounds silly, guys, but try this. Put a little sticky note in between. Every 8 pages, go through the whole book, and dedicate to reading just those 8 pages a day. It will change your life, I promise you. That was one of the big reasons. Oh, and I just got this note as I was writing this with Chris a minute ago. I'm going to show you this, guys. I got 2 notes while I was sitting there writing this presentation. So I took a picture of the 2 notes. I wasn't able to upload them because I have no, which Brian was laughing about it before, presentation skills, as you can see. But I got 2 awesome notes. One of them was just a random note from a student, Mitzi Diane, who is in San Antonio, Texas. And she said, Tom, I just received a non-refundable deposit for the biggest assignment deal I've ever done, $400,000. That's awesome, guys. $400,000 assignment fee. Her name is Mitzi Diane. If you want to look her up on Facebook, she does Facebook Lives now all the time. But the second note that I got that I think is even cooler, I cannot even tell you. This note I got, I just got this note. I just got this while I was writing this presentation. I got a pop-up from Kathy, who is Robert Kiyosaki's personal assistant. And he wrote a letter to me and he said, I also request, I don't want to read all of it because he's a very, very private person, but he requested that he wanted me to, we're going to meet again in about 3 more months. So I meet him every 6 months. I'm going to tell you how I met him, because if I could do it, you guys can do it. Guys, I literally spent time with Robert Kiyosaki. This is insane. If I was cutting his lawn 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would have been like, guys, you know Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad? I cut his lawn. I would have been like, that's so awesome. And now I sit with him for like 3 days every 6 months. It's insane. This is the best business on the planet. There is nothing like it. So he asked me to practice this thing called holosync meditation before I come, and then also he said, please read the new book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Please do not speed read this book, and he went into some more detail and some other stuff that's a little more personal. But you guys, read. That's where it comes from. The reason I was able to meet Robert Kiyosaki was from reading, and when I got to meet him, we spoke about a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's an awesome book. I highly recommend everybody read it. It's a game changer. Because we had so much interest in that book, and Michael Singer, he has 2 books, Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. He said, hey Tom, I have a small little book club. Why don't you come out? It's every 6 months for 3 days. I was like, yeah, I think I can make it. So that's that. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. What is wholesaling? A lot of people don't understand what wholesaling is, so I want to give you guys some real clarity right now. Wholesaling is the art of, number 1, consistently. That's the key word. Consistently finding discounted properties in where? Your community, right? Not from Birmingham to San Antonio, not from Port St. Lucie, Florida to San Diego, California, in your community. Anybody here wants to virtually wholesale? I'm not your guy. I have no idea how to do it. It's a completely different system. You want to find a house for 45 cents on the dollar in your community? That's the key. Next point, and this is so key, guys. People get into wholesaling and they start talking about what they do, and they talk really fast like I do, and I apologize if I'm speaking too fast. And they'll say, well, I can pay all cash, and I can buy as is. What does that mean, guys? When you're learning this stuff, right, the sellers don't know what the heck we're talking about. They have no idea. If you told me before I got into real estate that you were going to pay in cash, in my brain I would say, well, I don't care if you pay in cash. I'm going to get cash no matter what, right? So what difference does that make? So as a wholesaler, you have to understand what it is that you actually do. And what you actually do is you provide speed and convenience at the cost of price. Meaning that every homeowner in the country gets to pick two of the three. Right? They either want it done fast and they want top price, so they're willing to give up convenience, right? I'll have an open house every Saturday, and I'll do whatever I have to do, and I'm gonna bake bread when they come, right? And other people, they want convenience and they want price. So they want the highest price and they want it to be convenient. Obviously a lot of homeowners fit into that category. Who are we looking for? We're looking for speed and convenience. I need to sell right now. I have a reason. All of your sellers, by the way, they know they're selling at a discount. Nobody's pulling a fast one. Always be honest. I want you guys, if you have a pen and paper, to write this down because this will be a game changer for you. Be a truth teller and a truth seeker. A truth teller and a truth seeker. If you want to have an easy business, which means a business means it is a servant to you. You're not creating a job. If you want to have an easy, convenient, repeatable business, right, then you need to be a truth teller and a truth seeker. The reason that some new wholesalers are not honest is because they are anticipating and assuming. It is the death of a new wholesaler. If I tell the seller this, they're going to think that. If I'm honest about this, I'm worried that this will happen. Here's the reality, guys. Sellers are smart. We're not taking advantage of anybody. It's a pawn shop. This has nothing to do with real estate. The guy who's selling the Rolex for $300 in a pawn shop, he understands he's selling a Rolex for $300 in a pawn shop. These people are smart people. They're just like us. They look like us. They act like us. So these are not aliens. So be a truth teller and a truth seeker, and you'll be very surprised. And the more you do it, the more your confidence will build up. Because when you're hiding something, there's two things that happen. The first thing is you look weak. And the seller is typically a sinking ship, and they need somebody to tie a rope to. And if you look weak, they are not going to want to tie their rope to somebody who looks weak. And you look weak when you're lying or avoiding something. And here's the other thing that happens, and this is so true. If you're thinking about it, and you're worried about it, and you're anticipating that this is going to happen, you are going to literally run right into it. So people will say to me, well, what do you say when the seller says A, B, and C? How do you respond? The sellers don't say it. They don't say it because I'm not even thinking about it. I'm being honest about who I am and what I do. So understand what you offer. When you say you buy cash, that means Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, I'm not going to pull out of this deal in the last second because I can't get funding. That's what it means. Explain that to the seller. They'll understand that, right? When you say I buy as is, Mr. Seller, that means that I'm not going to have you spend a ton of money on this house to fix it up or be worried about anything. So always remember speed and convenience at the sacrifice of price. That's what we're offering. Wholesaling has nothing to do with real estate. Guys, if there's one lesson that you learned from this presentation tonight, I want you to understand that wholesaling has nothing to do with houses. I understand that a lot of people will say this is controversial and they'll say that they don't understand it. I do not care about real estate. Some people might be in here because they're interested in real estate. I give absolutely nothing for real estate. I have no interest, zero. I don't think it's interesting. I have no interest in what the cost of a 2-inch granite top bull nose counter. I have no idea. I don't care. I don't know terms. I was in a meeting recently. I'm in a mastermind. They used a term like cap rate. I have no idea what it means. So I have no interest in real estate. If cars were more expensive than houses, I would just wholesale cars. If watches were more expensive than houses, I would wholesale watches. I could really care less. I need people who have something that's of value, who want to sell it at a discount for speed and convenience. This is the number one reason why people create jobs. My wholesaling business, it goes on without me every single day. You know how many employees I have? 70, not 70. It's actually 60. I'm sorry, it's not 60, it's 40. Wait, 30, 20, 10. Oh no, it's 1.5. That's how many I have. 1.5 people run my wholesaling business because It's completely systematized, and I have absolutely nothing to do with it. So, and it makes a tremendous amount of money every single month consistently, and I have nothing to do with it. Why? Because we understand the basic concept that it has nothing to do with real estate. So I don't have any experts. I'm a McDonald's. I don't want a 5-star chef who needs to work on Christmas. That's not what I'm interested in running. I'm interested in running a McDonald's where I can have, a 24-year-old come in and see that there's a picture of a cheeseburger on the cash register, right? Nothing against McDonald's employees. I love them. I'm super impressed by McDonald's. Other thing is be a deal finder, not a deal creator, or you will create a job and it's frustrating and scalable. This is such a key point, guys. So many people are frustrated because they're trying to convince a seller to do a deal. Here's what I'm gonna give you a suggestion to do. Always, you know how they say always be closing? Don't always be closing. Always be pulling out of the deal. That's the best way to close a deal. Always be pulling out of the deal. Well, are you gonna sell this house right away for a profit? Yes. And then, I should say shut up, but I don't want to say that here because we're in the South and it's not polite, right? But I'm just going to say be quiet, right? So as soon as you're on a first date, and the person is leaned in, and then all of a sudden they give you a question like, well, do you have a Lamborghini? And then the person says, oh yeah, I have a Lamborghini and it's red and it goes really fast. No. You back out of the deal. No, I don't have a Lamborghini. Is that gonna end our date? Well, no. Mr. Seller, I don't intend to live in the house. Is that gonna prevent me from buying your house today? Always give them the option to pull out. When they're asking you questions, this is a key, guys. Every question is an objection. So I want to say this again. This is absolutely critical information for closing this deal. When a seller has a question, every question is an objection. Every question, every question, every question. Are you going to close in 30 days? That's an objection. Get behind the question. Why are they asking you that? You want to build rapport with somebody? Find out why they're asking you the questions they're asking you. That's the secret to this whole game. If you want to close more deals, don't convince them. Are you going to close in 30 days? Oh no, not only am I going to close in 30 days, I'm going to close in 15 and it's going to be all cash. And no, don't do that. Just pull out of the deal. Yeah, I'm gonna close in whatever it is and then pull out of the deal. That's the secret, guys. Always be pulling out of the deal. And what'll happen is, just like when you're sitting on a date and you lean in and the person leans away, when you lean away, they're gonna lean in, and then you're gonna get to the real core of the problem. This is so key. Brian, huge, obviously, with this. No competition, only collaboration. I know this is a difficult concept to understand, but I cannot stress this enough. There's no such thing as competition. You guys are made in the image of God. You can move a mountain. We have 2 or 4 or 5 gallon buckets and there's an ocean. We don't have a thimble and we're going to a puddle. There is more deals than you could ever do in a lifetime, and hopefully after your first dozen or so, you're not even involved in them. So there's tons to go around for everybody. I would definitely adopt this philosophy because it's going to affect your ability to hire people. It's going to affect your ability to work with people. If you have a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset, it is going to affect your networking skills. It's going to put a cap on your income. Everything you have, share. In this life, we only get to keep what we give away. That's it. Okay. Number 1 reason why new wholesalers fail is education. And you'll see I put in small print, it's misplaced, but it's really education. But we'll just say misplaced education. Here is what I mean by that. Education is very, very comfortable, right? People like the struggling masses, they love education. It's like a warm blanket and everybody's huddled up in a Starbucks learning all day, right? And we're all sipping our coffee and it's like, I'm moving, I'm getting an education. No, you're not getting an education. You're not getting an education. When you're sitting there listening to podcasts or my podcast and Wholesaling Inc., you're going to see a house and you're listening to Wholesaling Inc. podcast, I think that's great. You're sitting in your Panera Bread having like a cheese bowl? No, it's not education. So what does this mean, education is the number 1 reason why new wholesalers fail? Education is misplaced. What people think is they say, well, I want to get a deal, so I have to learn what to do, and then I definitely need a contract, right? So I need a contract. Well, I don't have the postcard, so I need a postcard. They're already on step 25. They haven't even made a phone call yet, right? So you need to get results. What is education? Education is results. So the way I like to do it is, number 1 is it's instruction. right? This is Mr. Miyagi Danielson. This was my brother Todd. This is why I was successful. Get instruction. Forget education. It's for the birds. If you're going to be a doctor, I want my doctor to have an education, right? If you're going to be a lawyer or an architect or a captain of a ship, yes, but don't learn with this method. But if you're going to do a real estate deal, you want a clear, simple, step-by-step instruction. Then you want to take what I call massive, imperfect action. Go out there and make a ton of mistakes, right? I don't have a contract, so I drew it up on a piece of paper, right? You bring it to the title company, and they're going to say, well, you can't do this on a piece of paper, and then they're going to hand you the right contract. Or you could spend 18 months taking courses to figure out what the right contract is. So, who's guilty of that? No, don't show me. Don't admit it. So, it's all about massive imperfect action, progress not perfection, speed of implementation, sense of urgency. Look at the 1%. These terms come from them. This is not a Tom Krol original. These are all, I don't have an original thought in my head. It all comes from these people who've come before us. When you take massive imperfect action with instruction, you're going to get a result. I guarantee you that's your education, right there. You want to do a deal quick? That's your education right there. Right, so you have a house under contract and you forgot to tell the cash buyer that he has to pay the closing costs. In that title room, you are going to get an education right there in 2 seconds. I know this because I had to drive and follow one home to get a cash assignment fee once, so that's how I know that. And that was Dorothy Cannon, my first deal on Aroso Boulevard, which I was super excited about. So, as a side note, I wanted to put this in here. I just made this change. I see a lot of new wholesalers do this, especially state to state. There's a lot of different opinions out there. There's only 3 types of wholesalers, right? When it comes to attorneys, there are the wholesalers who they don't care what the law says. They kind of follow instruction and then they just go out and they do everything wrong and they don't really care. Those people will never grow a business. They could make money, but they'll always have a job. They'll have created a job, not a business. Second people are what I call like the AlaREIA water cooler people, right? Brian, super smart, super successful, super good looking guy, right? He doesn't know anything about law. If he does, slap him in the face and turn around and say, I'm not going to listen to this. And say, Brian, say, before you give me any more legal advice, show me, where law school did you go to? Only take legal advice from an attorney. Trust me on this, it's absolutely true. And then you'll have a business instead of a job. This is one of the key, I put this in here because this is one of the keys to having a business. You have a legal question, what can I write in my contract? Don't write your own contract. Don't change something to the contract. You have no business doing that. So only attorney can, and a state attorney, meaning in the state that you're performing transactions. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. So, how do you find motivated sellers? Here's what we're going to talk about. If you go to a AlaREIA meeting like we are in this room right now, or if you go anywhere and you talk to successful or unsuccessful wholesalers and you say, you ask them some questions, you're going to get the same responses. This is why it's so good to be in a room like this, because you can get questions and you can know things right out of the gate. If you speak to people who struggle and you say, and they're struggling right now and they've done one deal or no deals and they're just kind of getting started, or they've been doing it for a while and they're working hard, and you say, how do you find your deals? They're always going to say the same thing. Well, I handwrote a few postcards, I called a few agents, I also did some door knocking, I did some driving for dollars, I put out some bandit signs, and I also whatever. If you speak to somebody who does $50,000 a month in net profit, right, or more, 100, 200, 300, they're always going to say the same thing. I do one channel, and I do it really, really, really well. And then sometimes they'll have automated that channel when it's simple and consistent, right? That's when you automate a channel, when it's simple and consistent. And then they'll pick another channel up, right? But what you're never going to see a successful wholesaler do is they're going to say, oh, I have 10% of 100 channels, or 10 channels. They don't do that. Successful wholesalers pick one channel and they crush it. They kill it every single time. The stuff that I'm giving you guys is like absolute. There's very few exceptions to this rule. Occasionally on the side with the successful ones, if they have a multiple faceted business, but very rare. Second thing that they do, one way to acquire houses. What do you see people who struggle do, right? they'll use terms like, well, I also want to learn how to do lease purchase options because in case they have a lot of motivation, but they don't have any equity, then I have this in my arsenal. No good. No good. If you want to kill it, you guys can move a mountain, but you can only move one mountain at a time. Right? One mountain. Right? So you want to have it. Here's what happens when you have multiple acquisition strategies. Oh, I have this opportunity here, and I'm going to do this, and then you might actually do the deal, which is the most dangerous, right? Because you might actually make money, and that is like the worst thing, because it's like a reinforcing that ability. But what, but what happens is, while somebody is struggling for 6 months to rehab a home, right? In that same amount of time, I've done 40 deals, right? When they've and not that rehabbing is great too, but if you're going to do the rehab and that's your exit strategy, you do rehabbing. So be very, very careful about the people who dip their toe in the water of multiple pools. The people who are committed and on fire, whether you go all the way up to the top or all the way down to the people who are just starting. Always, Gary Keller teaches us this: the art of the one thing. Mike Michalowicz teaches us from the Pumpkin Plan. Scott Alexander teaches us from Rhinoceros Success. All successful people, one channel, one way to acquire houses, one way to exit the house. That's it. Here's what happens when you're on fire like that. An opportunity comes, you realize it's not an opportunity, it goes to the side and you're going through quick, deal. That's how you get deals consistently all the time. Focus. People are like, I'm so focused. You're not focused if you have 3 ways to acquire property and 3 channels to find them. You're not focused. So if you want laser focus to actually implement what all these men and women who've come before us have done, narrow it down. What channel is the best? The channel you believe is the best. Whatever you believe is true is 100% true, right? If you think that this one zip code in Birmingham is the hottest zip code, it's the hottest zip code, right? So I happen to think direct mail is the best, but that's my personal opinion. But I'm not going to make that argument. So one channel, one way to acquire houses, one way to sell houses. Absolutely critical. Don't get confused here. So I've given you guys a lot. Is there any questions let's take like a 5-second breather here. Is there any, because I know I've given you guys a ton of information. Is there anybody who has any questions? They're confused, they disagree with anything? One, good, there we go.
I'm not really sure what you were saying about always be backing out of the deal.
Okay. Okay, good question. So always be backing out of the deal is, let's just say that you have a house under contract, right? And you put the contract out to assign to your cash buyers. Now, let's just say that that's your exit strategy. And you get back and you say, nobody's even close. You're like $10,000 below the highest offer. What a lot of people do is they will start to negotiate the deal. If you want to get a reduction on a deal, right, there's only one way to get a reduction. Hi, Mr. Seller, this is Tom. How are you? Good. Listen, I know we're supposed to close next week, but I have to cancel the contract. Should I send the cancellation agreement to the property address or to the mailing address? And then don't say a word. And that's it. And that is an example of always pulling out of the deal. I'm always having them convince me that I should give them my money. All the time, through the whole process, right? What a lot of new wholesalers do is they're in the mindset of like, well, the price is, well, Mr. Seller, here's what happened. I don't know, and da-da-da. Don't do that because now you're convincing them. As soon as you start convincing them, it's psychologically, it's not good because you are weak and you're not, it's just not a good way to do it. But this is on everything. So on every question, when they say, when they ask me a typical question, right, when I was doing this and when my acquisition manager does it now, we're always saying, well, if that doesn't work, we can cancel the contract. Or, is that going to prevent me from buying your house today? I intend to sell this for a profit right away. Zillow says that this house is worth $100,000 more. If you want, you can list it with an agent. You'll have to pay agent fees and you might have to wait a few months, but that might be your best bet. What I'm never doing is I'm never saying, this is why I'm better, choose me, pick me. I'm not ever doing that. I want them chasing me. The right motivated sellers, and motivation is a weird word. It's a very weird word because I think it's too heavy of a word. It indicates like you're going to get people. If you ask all the people in this room who've done, more than a dozen deals, very, very, very rare are you going to get somebody who says, "Oh, thank goodness you sent me a postcard." Just like right in the nick of time. That doesn't happen, right? I'm so motivated. I wish it would happen. It doesn't. But So that's what I mean by always backing out, is you're always at a moment's notice ready to cancel the deal. And they feel that in the relationship. It'll come through in your confidence. You'll smile and you'll be confident, you'll walk around. One thing that you could do to help that is always walk around like you have $500,000 cash in your pocket and there's a ton of houses for sale. So if you don't want me to buy your house, it's fine. No problem. It's good. Moving on. See you later. Well, I don't mean that I don't care if you're going to make a profit, but how much are you going to make? Well, I make big profits. You see right there, I did it again, right? I make a big profit. I make a very, my average profit on a deal is like 20,000. Just tell them. You have to smack them in the face with honesty. Do you know what I'm saying? Use that mental image. You want to take the seller and be smack them in the face with honesty. Don't hide anything that you do. Be completely upfront and honest. And what'll happen is, when you're separating the people, you're all of a sudden, there's 900 people who are not motivated, but you've got 9 deals, right? And now you're closing $147,000 this month in net profit, right? Because you didn't waste time trying to convince somebody to do a deal with you. There's so much time in this business that's spent convincing. This comes up a lot with follow-up. People are well, call me back, in 3 months and I'll think about it. That's too long. You want to bring everybody in your database to a yes or a no. People will ask me, well, what's a good follow-up sequence? A good follow-up sequence is, do you want to sell at a discount? Yes or no? Get right to the point. That's a good. I have very little people in my database because I want to bring it to a conclusion. Does that make sense? Awesome. Any other questions, guys? Feel free. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. You said being a true seller.
Yes.
In a marketing campaign, you see people send out, like I said, Dan things like you buy houses, or when you send out letters saying you buy houses.
Right.
I think what you said is more better to, like I said, be upfront, like you were saying, just say, hey, I'm a deal finder, as opposed to saying, I buy houses.
Yeah, so there's a great book by Dan Kennedy. It's called The No BS Direct Mail something or other. It's a very long title, but he's a great guy. The thing about marketing is sometimes there's confusion about what marketing is, and people think that marketing is the sale event. It's not. In our business and in all businesses, direct mail is marketing, which means it produces, it creates the event of the sale. So the point of marketing is to get as many of the right people to the sale as possible. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to tweak your marketing to be the event of the sale. So whenever and I would also recommend if you're new, are you new to wholesaling? If you're new, don't create a new postcard. Just go with a proven postcard. There are, I guarantee you, if you go to any website, they'll say they have the best postcard, right? But there's a lot of good ones out there. But just don't reinvent the wheel. But split test, because that'll help.
My question is about the channels.
Yes.
So specifically, there are obviously many different channels. Are there some that you think are better than others, or?
For sure, direct mail. Yeah, I like direct mail because it's the most consistent.
Do you just
And-
use a code and then send a postcard back?
Um,
Do you go through any of these web-based platforms that pull up every motivated potential seller and this, that, and the other?
Do you mean like Ken Clothier's Find Motivated Sellers Now?
That's
So there's a really easy way to find hot zip codes, which is you go to list source, and what you do is you just put in list source. Yeah, so there's a great, if you guys, I'll tell you what, there's an easy, Brian, are you in the room? Hey Brian, if you could, I'm gonna send you the link on how to find hot zip codes. Okay, so Brian will post it on the page, on your guys, on the AlaREIA page, but it goes through step by step in YouTube.
So would you say that you think that the deal with what you're saying, find motivated sellers now, is that worth it?
I like motivated. Actually, in our tribe, we recommend services. Find Motivated Sellers Now is a great service. We use it. But I'm going to give you in a minute the best ones that I would recommend. Any other questions, guys? Go ahead.
In my experience, you don't have a deal if you put money down.
Correct.
So I can use it's kind of like you're dealing all along. It's locked in once you put money down on the contract.
You're saying when we assign the contract, you're saying when we put it under contract with the seller?
You put in a contract with the seller.
Yes, right. We don't. So if my acquisition manager goes out,
And you can't keep backing out when you put money down. The contract,
how much money are you putting down?
I don't know, 1,000.
Yeah, so when I first did, I started with $1, and then eventually my attorney didn't like that, so he moved it to 100. Then I went through another attorney, he put it to 500, and then now we moved it to 1,000. But when I started, I did $1, and then it's funny you should bring this up because Brian Do you put what? How do you handle in Alabama the deposit? Because you and I just had a conversation about that, and it seemed like.
You just said not to take legal advice.
That's true. Don't take legal advice from Brian. That's a good point. Here's what I will tell you. When you say you can't back out, I mean, you can back out, obviously. Hopefully your contract says that. But you don't want to, I think you're kind of making a different point from my perspective, which is a good point, which is you don't want to just randomly put every house under contract. I mean, you want to have some idea, and I'm going to talk about how to identify a good deal here in a minute. But I agree with you. You don't want to.
I've always thought that you put down a nice down payment, they know you're earnest. It's their attention.
Yeah, you know, I don't really agree with that. I think we do something called concreting in the deal, right, which is a little bit more effective. So what we do is when we have a house under contract, and this is a great tip if you guys are losing houses to other people, or if you want to concrete in the deal emotionally with the seller, is we have the title company call within 24 hours of us putting a house under contract, and we say, "Hi Mary, this is the title company. I see here, you know, we're getting everything started, number one, right? So we say we're getting ready to close, we're getting all the paperwork ready, so that's the first point we make. Second point we make is we say, we don't have a note here, how do you want to receive your money? Would you like to have it wired? Do you want to pick up a check? So what's happening is the seller in their mind is already closing. We almost never have a house that pulls out of contract. Once we're under contract, and I think we now do put, it's either 500 or 1,000 down. But I agree with you. The other thing too is we leave the deposit with the title company, not with the seller. Do you leave it with the seller?
You know.
Okay, so
Ideally, you could go with the lawyer or some title company, whatever.
yeah, that's okay. So that's how we do it.
But one other thing, if I had some property and you came to me, you said, "Here I'll offer you $100,000, and here's $1, or here's $20," I think you weren't earnest, and that was just a game.
It's not something we come across. It really isn't. I don't really have that hiccup. I can tell you we've done legitimately hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals and thousands within the tribe. Honestly, I've never had that come up where the seller, I can't say in the tribe it's never happened, but I have never had a personal experience with the seller saying it's not enough. We make it more of a formality. So when we go through the contract, I'm going to talk about how to close a deal. We go through the contract step by step, and we haven't had that come up. It doesn't really come up, honestly. It might be one of those things that if you're thinking it's not enough, you're maybe creating that event. If that's something you're running into, I don't know if it is or not, but I mean, it's just a possibility. Was there another question, or? Yes, go ahead.
You talked about finding the one channel. Did you try different channels before you found that one channel?
No, I didn't try anything when I started.
Okay.
Yes, very important. You have to get out of your own way. Yeah, this is not about, so the problem is you are an entrepreneur, right? So what happens as an entrepreneur is you're at 50,000 feet and you have tons of good ideas all the time and you're not granular, you're not detail oriented, you're not, like all of us, I'm going to tell you, for the most part, 99.5% of us in this room, if you're in this room, you're entrepreneurial, which means you're a visionary, you go very fast, you have a lot of ideas. What you stink at is I would never hire you to do my books. Right? I would never hire you to be my marketing director because when I'm marketing director, I need to come in and do the same thing and measure results every single day. It's routine. That's not what we're good at, right? So when I got started, I did whatever Todd told me to do, and that was it. And if I questioned him, it was not a good day. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. And Brian is an amazing resource right here for you because he's obviously killing it. Okay, let's see what else we got here. This is good information, guys. I don't actually speak. I don't know if you guys can tell or not. So I'm not like a speaker. I don't go around and speak. I did this for Brian as a favor, and I wanted to give you guys some really useful information that you can actually implement right now and use and get some results with. So one of the benefits I have as being a coach is I get to see the results of all of my students for all across the country. I get to see what are the results. We have about a dozen lists that we recommend that you take, that you implement in your territory. So this is your list question. Okay, so these are the people. Now, I'll go through these. Unknown equity is a great list. Nobody is mailing it right now. Our tribe is having tremendous success with it. What it means, very simple, is that the county doesn't know the equity. It's usually a small list, so just very minimal criteria. House type is single family residential, unless you do condos here and other things like that. Unknown sale date, exactly the same list. By the way, guys, and I'm going to say this, every list that you can get from the county, township, municipality, or city is always better than the list that you're going to buy from a list company. If you absolutely cannot get it from those places, directly from the source, then you could buy it from a list company. But I would suggest, something I learned from Jack Bosch is the power of 5, which means when you go in there and you ask for the tax delinquent list, they are going to tell you it doesn't exist, there's no such thing, we never heard of it, who are you, we don't know you or like you, right? But the reality is, I guarantee you, you don't pay your taxes, you're going to get a letter. So there's a list somewhere. I promise you guys. So all of these lists, code violations, here's a few quick points about that. Current open code violations are awesome. Closed are even better. So we like to go back like 18, 24 months on our code violation list. I just looked this up because a student had asked me. Code violations don't get specific with the violation. It could be a blue tarp on the roof. It could be a fence that fell over. It doesn't matter. If they have a violation and it's just mail the whole list, it's typically small. For some of you, I would recommend that you do this ASAP since there's over 100 people in this room. Probate, I like to use Foreclosures Daily. The lady I use at Foreclosures Daily, her name is Tangi Cousins. She's awesome. If you tell her I sent you, I don't get an affiliate commission from her, but I think she gives our tribe a good deal. So if you tell her that, say, oh, I'm friends with Tom, she might, I don't know. I think she does give you a discount though. The other thing about probate is you get probate and pre-probate. That's the other list. And this is what's so good about wholesaling and not knowing anything about real estate. A student asked me recently, they said, Tom, you always say when you call Foreclosures Daily to buy the probate and the pre-probate, what does pre-probate mean? I have no idea. I don't know. It sounds interesting. I could probably come up with a really creative definition. I have no idea what pre-probate means, but I know we get deals from it, which is all I care about. Inheritance list, we use US lead list. That's Lance and Terry. They are phenomenal. And I want to make a quick note here about owner-occupied. Ever since the early 80s with Carlton Sheets, there has been this like belief system that has been like, it was a seed and then it grew into this tree. And it's complete garbage, which is that absentee owners are more motivated by a percentage than owner-occupied. That is absolutely not true. Lose that belief right now. Absentee owners typically are less motivated for a lot of reasons, right? Now, I'm not saying, should you still mail absentee owners? Yes. Typically, our biggest deals come from absentee owners, right? So I love that. But if you want the day in, day out business that is a servant to you instead of you being a servant to a job, owner-occupied is where it's at. That's where the best deals are at as far as volume. So those are the lists, guys. Any questions on the lists? Her name is Tangi Cousins at Foreclosures Daily. Foreclosure Daily or Foreclosures Daily. It's either foreclosure or foreclosures, but it should be right there.
What was the last name?
I'm sorry?
What was the last name?
Tangi Cousins. That's who we buy it from. Good? Good. Easy. Okay. So part of getting deals quickly, having a laser focus, and all of your power, guys, comes from your laser focus, right? Is if you, a lot of people, I go to these masterminds, right? They're very expensive, you know, they're great, and a lot of them, these guys, they get up there and they talk about all their employees and this and that, and they use these big SAT words, which you guys already know are not good for me, right? So these are all these acronyms, and one of them is, they'll use this word scale. Scaling or growth or automation or systems. I have no idea what they're talking about. So let's go with simplicity, right? The only definition of systems or scaling or growth to me is delegation. That's all I care about. As long as it gets done and I don't have to do it, I don't care if there's a program or not a program or scaling or whatever that means. How you do that, how you get to that point is by making simple systems. So how do we do this? The key is down here is don't be a decision maker, stick to a process. Every time you learn a new strategy, every time you learn more about houses and you become more of an expert, the less likely you are to automate your business. Every single time you make a decision, you make it more difficult to automate your business. Because I guarantee you the guys and girls who are kids who are working at McDonald's, they cannot run your business. Which means that even if you do hire people, you're still working. You'll hear this all the time with people who are making money. Like I have all these staff members, but I'm still married to my job. This is not a good long-term plan. The real freedom in wholesaling and real estate investing is not to make money. Money is great, but if you chase that rabbit, you'll be working until you're in a coffin. It's not a good plan, pretty much. So just know this: every time you find you're making decisions, or you're making too many decisions, just take a mental note. What are the decisions that I'm making? My buddy Joe McCall, who was here recently, right, spoke with you guys. Joe McCall told me one day, get a pad and pen, and write down everything that you do in the day. You'll notice you're making too many decisions, especially the guys and girls who already have a business in here but are working too many hours. You're typically an expert and you're making too many decisions. So with that in mind, let me give you a really simple way to start. You send out your marketing, whatever it is, SEO, Facebook ads, direct mail, whatever. Cold calling, I know, is a big one. Is there any TTP people in here? Oh, you guys are TTP. All right, awesome. Good stuff. Oh, good in the back. All right. So cold calling is another popular one. We had a student who came in and did really well, and we actually made him a coach, and he's great, Brent Daniels. So here is the deal. Every single phone call that comes in can only end one of a handful of ways. Why do we take the time to document this? Because it's a simple process, right? So my acquisition manager's on the phone. You either are going to go visit or send a contract. Now, this is going to be so key for you guys. This is a game changer. I'm telling you, this is a game changer. I want you guys to do this. Assume motivation. When you get a phone call, this is the most important thing, and I know I said this a lot, but all this is important. This is one of the most important things that new wholesalers make a mistake with, is they're waiting for the seller to convince them that they're motivated. Don't do that. Don't do that. Instead, if somebody calls you off of a 30-cent postcard, assume they're motivated. Let them prove to you that they're not motivated. Please stop mailing me. I don't want to sell my home and I have no equity. Great. Now you have a no. Move on to the next one. Otherwise, go out and see them. Don't wait for somebody to convince you that they're motivated. Assume motivation. This is one of the keys to scaling, because as you grow your business, if you become an expert by knowing just who is and who isn't motivated, guess who's not going to know that? The 24-year-old college graduate who's looking for a job is not going to know that. By the way, anybody who's hiring an acquisition manager, college degree is an absolute must. I'm just going to throw that out there for anybody who's kind of just thinking about at that stage where they're scaling. They must have an acquisition managers have to have a college degree. But that is the key, is that they are not going to, they're not going to know. The only way you're going to learn who's motivated now, if I'm on the phone call, or if now Dan is on the phone, we will know in 20 seconds if that's a deal or not. I legitimately mean this. This is not like, oh, he's being so. I'm telling you, they have a certain way that they speak, but the only way you learn that is by going out to every single appointment and realizing that some motivated sellers, they don't want you to know they're motivated, so they kind of like, they keep everything close, right? And they don't want you to know that, right? But these people need your help. They need your service. So essentially, go out, assume motivation, and go out to 100 appointments and have them all go bad, but that's the education right there. Right, take me off your list is the other way that obviously they're rude, they're just not a deal. You can take people off your list. Be very, very careful about the process you do in taking people off your list, because whatever you do, the person who works for you is going to do. And they're going to follow that process. Second one is a voicemail. If we get a voicemail, we leave them a voicemail and we send them a text. That's it. Hey, I was calling about the house. That's very important, the text, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that, because a lot of motivated sellers they're kind of like a introverted or a recluse. They don't want to really talk to you. So a text is a great way to open up a conversation. But get on the phone as soon as possible. Next one is they're going to be a future follow-up. And the next one is sometimes you have agents or cash buyers. So add them to your list if they're friendly. If they're not, don't. Don't add anybody to your cash buyer list who's not friendly. That's true. So that is the key. Now, here is the deal. One thing that I learned early on that I thought was a total garbage and a total waste of time, and we just got a deal doing this, and nobody does it. Some people say that they do it, but then as soon as I dig a little bit, it turns out they don't do it. Everyone gets an offer. You guys should write this down and put it right above your desk. Everyone gets an offer. I learned this from Sean Terry when I first got started, then Todd implemented it with me. He said, you got to do it. I had a guy, his name was Paul. It was one of my very first dozen deals. It was on Salaz Avenue in Port St. Lucie. He totally unmotivated. It was a small little CBS house. He said, oh, you know, I don't want to sell this effing house and da-da-da-da-da. And he was not a happy camper. He told me it was $80,000 at the time. That was a lot of money for that house. And I said, okay, well, thank you anyway. I sent him an offer. On that particular home, Todd was arguing with me, and I said, why am I sending an offer? It's a waste. I don't have a lot of money right now, and I don't want to do that. I sent an offer. He called back, and he said, we got your offer in the mail. Can you still, it's time sensitive, so it had expired. He said, can you still buy the house for $24,000? I said, no, I can't, but I'll come take a look at it. And it was a great deal. And I got the house for, I believe it was either $14,000 or $16,000. I made a killing on it, and it was a great deal. So everyone gets an offer. That's the bottom line. That's the key. Okay, so any questions about the way phone calls should end? Easy. All right, guys. Good. One question.
What do you do when someone doesn't seem interested, or you're delaying the process? Like you said, I'm with you on the yes or no answer, taking off your research. I like to get to the point. What do you do when you know someone wants what you have? You're just questioning.
You got to turn up the heat on the follow-up. Right, so you got to turn up the heat on the follow-up. Your point is not to have a database of 16,000 people that you just call all day and don't get a deal. You want to ask the uncomfortable questions. Why are you not ready? You know, I mean, I've had times where I've gone out to houses. You know, I wouldn't recommend that. But here's what I'm going to suggest: turn up the heat on your follow-up. The problem is you're just keeping them in that process too long. So, for instance, sometimes the student will say, "Well, I have a follow-up sequence where I have a follow-up sequence where I'm going to follow up with them in 2 weeks. If you have nothing to do, call that person right now. I know I just spoke to you 3 days ago, but are you sure you're not? Yes, I don't. You want them to get angry or say, "Come over for a visit." You want to bring everybody to like a head. You know what I'm saying? Because you're never, and this is important, you're never going to convince anybody to do a deal with you. It doesn't work that way. I'm not saying, and I'm talking, this advice is in the 80% realm, but I'm not saying if you're a really good salesman, you might be able to work and convince somebody to give you a low price, but for the most part, they're not going to do that. So what you want to do is you want to just kind of create an event, and so bring up price. That's a great way to end the call. Price is a great way to end the call. As wholesalers, we will never win on price. This is such a common mistake that new wholesalers make. You're not going to win on price, so get it out there. Let's talk about price. When I first started, I did a deal in the lobby. This is a true story. I did a deal in the lobby of my doctor's office when I was sitting to see my doctor. And the reason I did it, number one, is because of the motivation, right, of saying, hey, I'm doing this to save my family, right? So every person I met, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I'm looking for a good deal. I can pay all cash. I can close immediately. You don't have to spend the money, but it's got to be a good deal. Are you selling your house? No. Do you know anybody? So be persistent, right? Do you know anybody who's selling your house? The people who want it, right? Eric Thomas, right? When you want it as bad as you want to breathe, you're going to do a deal. I could fly out to Birmingham and see you and stand in your way and you're still going to do a deal. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you adopt that kind of mentality with your follow-up and all the people that you speak to, right? Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I would treat follow-up, is be like a little bit aggressive. And pricing is a great way to initiate that. Easy. Oh, go ahead.
Do you use like a standard contract template that it always looks the same so you can get them out quicker?
I do, but the contract that I have, we have like an example contract in wholesale. Are there any Wholesaling Inc. students in here? There are. How are you? Good. Oh, I know who that is. Okay. Good to see you. All right. Yes. We have a standard one, but you brought it to your attorney, right? There you go. So that's the key. So we want to just make sure you bring an attorney. But we have a standard one. We use what's this company in Texas? Go Big Printing, is that the name of the company? I think so, maybe, possibly. Go Big Printing, I think, is the one we use. But you have to get one written by an attorney, honestly. And I'm not just saying that to get an attorney. You really got to go to an attorney.
Use the Birmingham Association of Realtors standard contract.
I don't use anything when it comes to legal unless it comes directly from my attorney. And I mean that. Yeah, the only things that you get you in trouble is when you take advice from somebody who doesn't have a law degree. For sure. So I would recommend not doing that. Yeah, go ahead.
you a price to close on, would you advise keeping the price then or for a dependent home?
All right, you ready? 7. That's your new number, right? We asked them to give us a price 7 times. That's the key. 7 times. So if after 7 no's, then you kind of take it from there. But that's going to be. And was there another hand that was up? I'm sorry. Yes.
Now you said I'm a little confused as to everyone gets an offer.
Okay.
Now, if you send out multiple postcards, I'm confused as to everyone gets an offer.
Okay, so let me clarify that. Like if you're cold calling Craigslist, everyone doesn't get an offer. Yeah. So this is only for response marketing. So the people who are calling you back. If you're not going out to visit them, send them an offer.
Whomever you're in conversation with.
Yeah, everybody in this category.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is a 101 question.
Okay.
I'm a beginning wholesaler.
Yes.
Okay. You go and you find a house, you're wanting to buy one to flip, but it's not for you, maybe it's too much, but you want to tie it up. You put your name in the contract, or assigns, right? And then you put it out as like, I have a section.
Okay.
For the next 2 weeks, and it gives you some time to find someone to buy it. Is that basically?
So wholesaling, believe it or not, although I know everybody believes this, has nothing to do with the exit strategy of the property. It has absolutely nothing to do with the exit strategy of the property, in my opinion. I believe wholesaling has more to do with the acquisition of the property. When you say, are you asking me like, what is the basic concept of wholesaling? So when you put a property under contract, you are going to either assign it the contract, or you're going to buy the property and sell the property, or buy the property and keep the property. But your intention, though, be careful about the idea of tying up a property, right?
I can't afford it. It's above my budget, but I know it's a great deal.
Well, how many cash buyers?
I'm a buyer.
How many cash buyers do you have on your list?
I'm just starting.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that with you in a minute. You're the only one who's good. That's good. That you're powerful. You can do this. Oh, it's no problem. So good. That's good. Partners usually come from a scarcity mindset. So. All right, no, good. Well, Brian, I trust. You can trust him. All right, so let's talk about something that's similar, which is how to come up with the price that you offer the seller, right? This is a very common question, right? I don't know if there's a more common question. So let's talk about this. Number 1, it starts in your belly. I know nobody wants to hear that, right? Who doesn't want to hear it starts in their belly? Let me see. All right, good. I see a few honest people. It's good. So it starts in your belly, right? I'm going to tell you guys, I used to ask Todd, I don't know how to price the property, right? And he would say, get it low, and then hang up on me. And I'd be like, and I'm like, what do you mean? And then I'd call him back and like, why did you hang up on me? I don't know how to put this property under contract. He's like, I told you to get it low. I said, how low? He said, when it hurts in your belly to make that offer, you're low. That's what it means, right? I'm just going to tell you guys right now, literally for a free app on Zillow, you're going to know what to put a property under contract for. So let's just start with, it's got to be uncomfortable, it's got to be low. That's the bottom line. Number 2 is, and I want to say this too, if you guys, just as an experiment, hired 5 appraisers, 5 landlords, 5 rehabbers, 5 agents, 5 brokers, and 5 sellers, and you said, hey, everybody, tell me how much this house is worth. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get 25 different answers, and they're going to range. And these are trained, professional, licensed, bonded people with experience, right? So here's what I'm telling you. Nobody knows what the house is worth, and nobody cares what you think the house is worth. Legitimately, right? We're going to talk about that, but nobody cares, right? So there's all this anxiety about pricing and valuations. Nobody cares. Get it low. Here's the other thing is, what if you're wrong? Right, so you can educate yourself about the value of houses for 18 months, or you could just use a guesstimate off of Zillow, right? But what happens if you're wrong? Guess what? If you put the house under contract for too little, you're just going to make a lot of money, right? If you put the house under contract for too high, you're going to cancel the contract. That's it. There's not like a, so don't get. So I know what it feels like because I went through it, but that's the key. And this is what I was saying, right? Yeah, everyone is full of it when it comes to price, and nobody cares. Also, ARV. Does anybody evaluate off of ARV? Nobody. Oh, I see one person nodding. Okay, there's an honest. All right, there we go. Good. Here's what ARV stands for. Does anybody know what it stands for? No, it does not stand for that. ARV stands for It stands for assumptions what's the word that I use now? I can't even think of it. But when you make assumptions, they are going to reduce your victories. So assumptions reduce victories. Here is the bottom line. You, first new wholesaler, have no idea what ARV means, right? I have done hundreds and hundreds of deals. I have no idea what ARV means. ARV, if you think it's hard to price a property now on current market value, it's impossible to come up with a value for a property. What does that even mean? After repair? What is repair? If I put in a countertop, is that a repair? What if I spend $150,000 on a repair? Is that a repair? I don't know, right? So here's what I'm going to say. You could spend 15 years coming up with this number, and you'll almost always still be wrong. But here's the bottom line: is nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, your cash buyer investors, they don't care what you think, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but they don't care what you think the price is, and they don't care what I think the price is. The only person who matters is the person who is going to buy the contract or buy the house. That's the only person who matters when it comes to pricing. So with all of that said, let me give you the actual method that we do use. Actual method that we use is 80% of the 3 lowest comps in the area. So what does that mean? You go to Zillow, you go past the 6 months period, you go to the past 6 months of all the recent sales for similar properties. What does that mean? Whatever you want it to mean. Similar properties, same subdivision, similar square footage, similar bedroom count, whatever. I don't really care, right? So 80% of the 3 lowest comps. And then what you do is you check it against your listings. Right? So you guys, here's the deal. If you think that a house is worth $100,000 and similar homes, now you go from for sale, what is sold, to what's currently available, and you see that there's 3 properties that are for sale with an agent that are less than yours, and your property's not that much better, you're at the wrong price. That's it. Here's the difference. Ready? 18 months of training to still get the wrong answer, like a minute and 30 seconds. Right? I mean, this is the way to do it, right? So any questions on valuations? Because I know that one's a little bit sticky sometimes. I know the ARV guy has his arms crossed. I'm watching. Any questions on ARV? Or yeah. So okay. This is a very loose guideline. Okay. So 80% of the 3 lowest. So here's what you do. You find the 3 lowest houses. Let's just say it's 60, 80, and 100,000, right? Let's just say one of them is totally burned out and sold for 14,000. Just take it off your list and go to the next 3 lowest, right? So if one is like a totally left field, you take the average of those 3 and you reduce it by 20%. So if you have, let's just say you have a 80, 100, to keep the math simple, 100 and 120, and the average is 100, your offer is 80. That's it. Then what you do is you just go, okay, now forget sold, right? Now let's go and check out what's currently listed with agents on Zillow or Trulia or whatever you're comfortable with, and you just see what the price looks like. If you see homes that are right next door that are similar and they're for the same price, you don't have a good deal. Your price is wrong. So come up with your price and then check it. It's easy. It's easy. That's it. Don't let price be the barrier. Like, I don't know how to do valuation. So right now, nobody in this room should say, I'm not going to get into real estate investing because I don't know how to come up with finding a price for a seller. Make sense? Yes, go ahead.
What if there's no home like in the immediate area of that sold?
Yeah, just use your best judgment. And so, sometimes what I used to do is I had some friends, because I used to go to Panera Bread and listen to Joe McCall's and Sean Perry's podcast, and my brother Todd at the time. And while I was doing that, if I saw, I remember specifically one time I saw a lady with a Century 21. I'm trying to think of her name. I can't think of it, but she had a Century 21 badge on, and I introduced myself, and then she actually ended up helping me kind of come up with a number for some of those, just out of the ordinary homes in the middle of nowhere. We have a part of Port St. Lucie where it's a little quieter, and I just had no idea. But the key really is don't let it stop you because you don't know, because if you're wrong, be honest with the seller. I don't know. I want to do a little more research. So I'm going to put this house under contract, but I'm just telling you now, Mr. Seller, don't move out today. Because, I'm not 100% sure. I saw something driving here. There was another home for sale. It's similar to yours. And, but just be honest. But don't worry too much about valuations. Like I said, you can have 10 different people who are all experts, and they'll give you 10 different values. especially if you're trying to sell them the home. Then it's a whole different game entirely. Make sense, guys? All right, easy peasy. Is there a question back there? Yes.
You said take the average of the three and lower it by 20%?
Yes, so you want 80% of the three lowest, the average of the three lowest. Unless there's an oddball, and then just take it out. And was there another? Yeah, go ahead.
So it's 80%. I don't know if that would always hurt when I make the offer. Like, is that not, it seems like it's not low enough to offer.
Well, don't forget it's the three lowest.
Yeah.
So that should get you pretty low.
But if they're accurate, I mean, I don't know, you know, if they're.
Well, let's just say there's like 100 homes that have sold. You're only dealing with the lowest. So it should, and I also want to say this is typical. This is like a typical scenario. So if you're finding that you're consistently coming in too high or too low, just edit your model. You know, go to 60% or 85% or whatever. It doesn't really matter because the results you get by trying to sell that contract are going to give you the feedback that you need. Does that make sense? So you'll know right away. The guys and girls who get the most results always make the most money. Every single time. There's no failure and there's no success. There's only results. So if somebody trains to do this, and if somebody just goes out and makes 10 offers and then they know, you'll know right away that it's either working or not, and you have to tweak it. If that makes sense. Any other questions on that? Okay, easy. So let's talk about this. This is another thing that people sometimes struggle with when they're really kind of new to wholesaling is how do you put the deal in their contract? So first of all, I want to tell you guys, when I was first starting, there was my brother made a podcast he doesn't own anymore, and it was called Real Estate Investing. Oh man, what is the name of it now? If you look up the podcast by Todd Toback, and he has an episode in there, it's episode number 10. And I used to play it again and again and again. And on episode number 10, he will tell you exactly how he sits with the seller. And it's totally free, the podcast, you can listen to it. But it's episode number 10, and I would listen to it every time about how to get a property under contract. So I want to encourage you guys to check that out. Let me say this, I'm going to give you a little trick here. As wholesalers, are we going to ever win the deal on price? No, right? Good. Okay. So the only way you're going to understand how you can be a servant to the seller is if you build rapport and get down to the meat and potatoes, right? Of why are they actually selling? So here's the difference, right? I meet your sister for the first time and we find out she's getting a divorce and she talks about it for 2 seconds and I don't really know the real reason, right? But then later on, I ask you, hey, your sister's getting divorced. Why? Because you're her brother or her sister, right? Your siblings, you're going to be able to give me the real story, right? That's how you want to be with your sellers. So when someone calls me up when they're first starting with wholesaling and they get a support call and I'll say, well, why is the seller selling the house? What's the first thing they tell me? Well, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,200 square foot home and it's in this area. I don't care about the house. I do not care about the house. Why is the seller selling the house? Because their kids went to college and the house is too big. Is that a reason? Not really, right? That's I need to know really why are they selling the house? Because all of our deals have an actual legitimate reason. We just did a deal, the seller was getting a divorce. They had to sell right away. Absolutely critical that you understand wholesaling has nothing to do with real estate and has nothing to do with we're not going to win deals on a price, and it's all about building rapport and being able to tell me the real reason why they are selling that property. It's absolutely key. We already spoke about assume motivation. The other thing that I'm going to tell you guys is 100% response is everything. The people who respond the fastest will win. I don't like live answer. I know some people do. We don't have to have the argument. I like voicemail and then we call them back. But you got to be able to call those people back in 20 seconds ideally. If you go 2 minutes, that's fine. Anything more than 20 minutes and it's not going to work because the sellers that you will miss will be the motivated sellers. The people who don't answer you back. So fast response rate. This is all about as soon as they call in. You get back to them right away. Any questions about actually closing the deal? I know the podcast you're going to have to listen to, but does anybody have a specific question on how to put a property under contract? Good. All right. This is going to be a little controversial for the people who have a lot of money in this room. I understand that, but that's okay. So we have a saying in the tribe. It's called, don't be a CBE. Does anybody know what that stands for? Okay. What is it? Cash buyer employee. employee. This is such a common mistake that new wholesalers make. They're like, I want to leave my job so that I can go get a job. And it's not a good idea. So here's how you can accidentally and very common make the mistake of becoming a cash buyer employee. What happens is when you first start, you only have a handful of cash buyers, and then you start doing deals, and then all of a sudden you start getting a little bit bigger, you start doing more deals, and then what happens is the cash buyers are like, yeah, but Tom, you know, I really helped you out on that last deal, and I didn't really make a lot of money, and da-da-da-da-da, so can you give me this next one? And what happens is they end up becoming cash buyer employees, and they really believe it. Like, they'll be like, no, but Tom, I only have 7 cash buyers, but they're so reliable. If you're saying that to yourself right now, that I have a small amount of reliable cash buyers, reliable is the #1 red flag that you have a job and not a business. Because when they're reliable, first of all cash buyers are pretty much reliable. That's why they have cash, right? So there's usually reliable people. But multiple cash buyers is the only way to win the game. You guys, I want to tell you this, cash buyers are a dime a dozen. It's the sellers that are difficult to find, not the buyers. In this room, there are cash buyers. There are cash buyers on your block, in your family, all throughout your neighborhood, where you work. They're everywhere. They are a dime a dozen. So do not become beholden to a cash buyer. Cash buyers are so savvy and they're so smart. They will have you working for them before you even know it. You'll have a full-time job. I got to run out to get this deal to get Jerry a deal. It's like, wait a second, what just happened? So the way we're going to do this is all cash buyers follow your rules. Now, if you guys are just doing your very, very first deal and you're just starting, I understand if you have 5 or 10. I totally get it. So this might be for people, but here's what I'm going to tell you. The more cash buyers you have, the people with the biggest cash buyer list win. This is absolutely, like, you remember, you guys, I said I was going to give you advice that this is 100% true. There's not even one iota. This is 100% true. You go to the top largest wholesalers in the country, how many cash buyers do you have? The people who are consistently making $100,000 a month, every single month in net revenue, how many cash buyers do you have? 1,200, 1,400, 4,700, 5,800, 8,700. You got to go to the guys who are working all the time and not making a lot of money. Their deals seem small, right? Their assignments are small, like 4,000, 5,000, 7,000. Why are they small? 5 cash buyers. It's a supply and demand issue. This is such an easy no-brainer, guys, right? So here's the key. Build your cash buyer list. In our tribe, in order to get started to market for sellers, you have to have a minimum of 150 cash buyers just to get started with your first mailing. We require that. It's like part of the program, right? So cash buyers are a dime a dozen. Don't become a cash buyer employee and make them play by your rules. The way we do that is we send out the email. There's going to be an inspection. It's going to be in 3 days. It's going to be from 2 o'clock to 2:30. After that, you have 24 hours to make your highest and best offer on the contract. That's it. Tom, I can't make it. Can I get in and see it early? No. Sorry, can't do that. If you bend the rules for 1 cash buyer, you might as well fold up shop and go back to 5, because as soon as everyone will know that they can't trust you and they won't like you and they won't work with you. But they'll respect you if you do it. And the people who are going to say, well, yeah, but that's really going to make my cash buyers mad. No, it won't. I've had this happen personally. I'll never work with you again. You're greedy, right? That's what they're going to tell you guys, right? Because they're going to like bend you to their will. They'll get really angry. People will hang up. They'll be angry with you. But if you respect them and you're fair to everybody, you don't let anybody in early and you don't make any exceptions, everything will be smooth and easy, and you'll do deals all the time and it'll be no problem. And you'll constantly and don't play any games with them by like going back to like all of the buyers and then trying to, don't do that. But that is the best way to do it. There was a question, I'm sorry.
It's not really a question, just to ease everybody's anxiety, like all you new all you new wholesalers. There's a thread right on our AlaREIA Facebook page and of cash buyers, and it's probably about 150 long.
There you go.
I'm a cash buyer, we're a dime a day.
There you go. I love it. Oh, that should get an applause right there, because that is a very rare, honest cash buyer. That guy should be on your list. Yes, for sure, guys. It's really true. If you want a really easy business, again, guys, remember, this is all about freedom. Right? right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about freedom. It's not about the money. Anybody in here could do a deal and make a $20,000 assignment. It's not a big deal. I know it is if you're just starting, you're like, oh, $20,000 would change my life. Yes, but you know what would really change your life? If you're like, consistently doing that. Absolutely. You want true freedom? Freedom is not in money. There is no freedom in money, guys. No money in freedom. There's no freedom in money. There's freedom in a business that is a servant to you, right? You want to create that servant, then you have to be gutsy and you have to make your cash buyers follow your system. You're in charge. You're made in the image of God. You can do it, right? So don't fall into that trap. And I'm a little emotional about this one because I did this for a long time, for like my first 20 deals. And they would just tear me apart and you're taking too much and you can't do it for that much of an assignment fee. You only found the deal and you want to make $5,000? $5,000? Oh my goodness. Somebody should have slapped me back then. All right. Oh, this is my favorite slide. I just made this one. I wasn't sure, but here's what I'm going to say. So this goes back to who you are and what you're good at and knowing who you are, knowing your purpose. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. Once you start doing deals, if you want to do deals consistently, the number one way to guarantee that you're not going to do it consistently is to do your own marketing all the time. Here's exactly what is going to happen. This will happen to you if you're brand new, right? This will happen. You're going to be working hard, marketing, right? Then you're going to do a deal, right? But because you're in charge of the marketing, now your attention is on the deal. And guess what just happened? You forgot to approve the proof to the marketing company for the postcard who decided not to send it without your proof. Right, so what's going to happen is, because you stink at this stuff, any of the routine stuff, as entrepreneurs we all do, and it's not that we're better than other people, it's just that we're different, right? So because you're not good at it, every time you take your attention away from it, it's going to go down. Now here's the problem with this happening, and this is so key. Marketing, especially direct mail, is like a train. Right, so you're going to start pulling it, and then as soon as you start pulling a little, you're going to hit the second car, and that's going to be harder, and then you're going to keep doing that, and then all of a sudden it's going to start going. And you want to have your marketing going out consistently, every single week consistently. So what happens is, when you are doing it yourself, and then you get busy with a deal, and you stop, the train stops. And it's going to take you so long to get that train going. And I know some people are sitting there going, no, Tom, that's not true, because I'll just hit another mailing. It doesn't work that way. And I'm telling you from hundreds, I've coached now thousands of people, thousands, and I'm telling you this is a consistent problem. So as soon as you start doing deals and you're making some money, hire a virtual assistant to do your marketing. They are super great at that. Some people think virtual assistants like, oh, they're overseas and they're not really real people, right? They're real people. Sorry, they're awesome. As a matter of fact, my personal assistant, my virtual assistant, AlaREIA, she has been with me from day one. We flew her from the Philippines recently to come with us to our last event. Brian got a chance to meet her in Orlando. Super phenomenal young lady, family lady, super intelligent, like $3 or $4 an hour, right? Awesome. Right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're just getting started, which by the way, she makes a lot more than that now. She makes $60,000 a year. But and in the Philippines, that's amazing. But when you're first starting, a virtual assistant is a game changer. They're good at what you stink at. And I guarantee you, when it comes to, even if by the grace of God, somehow with laser focus and all of your energy and attention, you could somehow put a KPI, which stands for Key Performance Indicators, even if you could put it together, which you probably couldn't, but even if you could, you're never going to look at it. I guarantee it. You'll put it together, and then you won't look at it. I know this from personal experience. So what I would suggest is, as soon as you can afford it, go all in, hire a virtual assistant, and the way it should work is you should have a sequence. What is a sequence? It's very, very simple. You have a certain number of lists, you have a postcard that you attach to those lists, and you have all of your lists going out on a sequence. So on week 1, I believe I have a 10-week cycle. So every 10 weeks, it just rotates through. Sometimes it's an 8-week cycle, sometimes it's a 12-week cycle, because we do change it out. But essentially, it's a cycle of mailings. So what we do is we have a postcard and a mailing go out every single week. I like to mail out at least 5,000 pieces a week, which may sound like a lot or not a lot, depending on who you are in this room. But that produces an excellent ROI from us. And it's on a schedule, and we are constantly, not me, someone else is looking at the KPIs. That would be Stephanie. She's awesome. And she's saying, hey, on week 8, we've mailed this list with this postcard, 2 times it failed. We're going to try a new postcard, and then if it bombs again, we're going to replace it with a new list. I'm not making that decision. right? That's why I don't run the business. So the key is outsource all the stuff that you stink at. The last thing that you should outsource should be meeting with the sellers. Meeting with the sellers is the last thing. That is the most closely directed to your revenue, is when you get belly to belly with the sellers. So that should be the last thing. So you'll see a lot of people sometimes, they'll say, when is it the right time to hire an acquisition manager? Or should I hire an acquisition manager? When you're doing deals consistently, 2 or 3 a month at least, a minimum is 2 or 3 a month, and when you're not doing the marketing. If you're still doing your marketing, it's too early to hire an acquisition manager, 100%. When it comes to acquisition managers, by the way, definitely 100%, I said this already, college degree is a must because you want people. Colleges are employee factories. That's what they produce. They produce employees, so go get employees from the employee factory. We're entrepreneurs. I don't have a college degree. I know some of you do, and there's maybe a little controversy around that, but I'm going to tell you, I know plenty of very wealthy 1% people now that I get to spend time with. Very few of them have college degrees. Some of them do. But the people that work for them, they have college degrees. No question about that. So definitely hire acquisition managers who are college graduates. Go ahead.
You brought up a question. You brought up one about having 150 people in your CBI, cash buyers.
Yes.
So my question is, you also discussed having RI, some acceptable amount, which brings up the question about having a marketing budget. How many hours a week? Can you look at it like that? Or?
Yes. So what is it? Okay. So one of the requirements that we have in our tribe is to come in. You have to spend it. You have to promise us that you're going to have a budget of $1,000 a month for the first 3 months in direct mail. But wholesaling is a numbers game. Almost all sellers who sell home, they want speed and price or convenience and price. And the more marketing you send out, the better. If you have a tight budget, there are things you could do. There's things like cold calling that you could do. But cold calling it's very, very high demand on your time. And a lot of people try to outsource it a little too quickly. So that one I'm not as familiar with, but there are other ways to do marketing. But here's the thing. The reality is, some people will say, well, I don't have $1,000 a month. But that's not really true. I would argue that most people in here, if put in the right situation, right, could produce $1,000 a month. I really do. I don't believe there's anybody in this room who couldn't come up with $1,000 for the next 3 months, every month. If they can't, if you feel like you can't, it's a mindset problem more than a reality problem.
So, I don't believe in, why should I invest? Why should anyone else invest in me if I'm not willing to invest in myself?
Right.
Okay, so with that being said, you're saying, I'm hearing you talking about postcards a lot.
Yes.
About 8 cents a postcard, 40 cents for postage. I don't know what the cost of the postcards are, but you might be more than 10, 25 cents.
I think it's 38 cents total.
38 cents per card.
38 or 33, I have to look at my report.
Plus another 40 cents for mailing.
No, that's total.
Total.
Right, so we pay 3 cents a name at list source,
Right.
and then we pay 33 or 38 cents a postcard. Now, is that right? Is that your? Okay, yeah.
So you're basically sending out 1,500, 2,000 cards a month if you're doing direct mail.
I send out 5,000 postcards a month, but I didn't start with that.
$1,000 though. But if you're starting off with $1,000,
Right.
right, you divide that 30, 40 cents, and you've got yourself about 2,000 cards going out.
Correct.
So you're saying send out 2,000 cards a month.
I'm saying
If you have.
I'm saying go broke on your marketing, which is, a lot of people will say that's a controversial advice, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I'd rather see you spend all the money you have to get this work to find financial freedom and then fail by the sword than a death by 1,000 needles of a trickle campaign for 18 months and never get a deal. It's just, and I'm only coming from a place of really a student myself, not even a coach. I really believe, like, when you reach a point where you're just gonna do this, you're gonna, you're just, Tony Robbins teaches us that, in this life we don't get what we want, we only get what we can't live without, right? And I'm gonna just tell you, if you make that decision and you're like, I am just gonna get a deal, and I'll tell my students, get a deal or die trying. And I know it sounds crazy, but I've never had a student die ever. I haven't. And so yeah, and I would say, make that commitment, and then just, it's such, on that side, on this side of it, of it's just such a different it's worth fighting for. You know, so that's really what I believe. So that's, I think, you know, I would just put it in my mind, when you say 1,000 is the minimum, I would say, what is the maximum? If I sold my television and my couch, which I don't need, right, how many more postcards? I used to look at things and say, how many postcards would that TV be? I mean, I was literally bankrupt and I had like a 56-inch television. Literally, like, I don't mean like, oh, I was poor. Like, I literally went through bankruptcy. Like, it was crazy. So, you know, you can't be like, I want it, and I have a 65-inch television. Like, no, you don't really want it. Like, your kids aren't really kidnapped. Like, you kind of want it, but but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the.
You send out enough postcards every month. You probably send out hundreds of thousands of postcards, right?
I only send out 5,000 a week. Oh, you mean in the whole tribe?
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So you can probably come back and say, you got an estimated response rate of what? 1.1?
Okay, so that's a great question. So the way response rate works is very different. So I had a student, one of my favorite students, he was in Jackson, Mississippi. I mean, so he would send 10 postcards and get 150 phone calls. Not really, but it was kind of like that. And then I have students in like Los Angeles and San Diego, and they'll send like 98,000 postcards and get like 100 phone calls, right? So, and that's actually not that far off that number. But it really depends on where you are. Response rate is very, very much based on geography. What I will tell you though is a high response rate is usually a bad thing. You usually want to get the card perfectly dialed in so that you get a low response rate and a high conversion rate. Because if I give you, I could create a postcard right now that'll get a 50% response rate. I buy houses for 100%, 50% of their value, right? Your phone will ring off the hook, but it's like taking molasses and pouring it over your whole business. Right, so response rate is the wrong number to measure for a KPI. It's always conversion rate. I want to know if I bought your company, if I wrote you a check for $100,000 right now and I bought your company, every single week my assistant would call you and I would want to know how many postcards went out, how many meetings did you have, how many phone calls did you make. That's the only KPIs I care about. Because I know that I make money when you're in front of a seller.
So what's your conversion rate for 100,000 postcards?
I have no idea. For 100,000, I mean, I'd have to look at months of data. But I mean, I could say, in Birmingham, what is the response rate for 5,000 postcards? Do we know?
I don't know. I'm 3 weeks in.
Well, that's okay. Okay, so it depends. I don't know. I really don't know. I'd be guessing. I don't want to give you any information that's not 100% spot on. Any other questions about that, guys? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, so first hire is marketing. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, just real quick.
Yeah.
I assume that you're getting such a low price for this source and your postcards simply because of volume? Or what is it?
Well, first of all, we don't take an affiliate commission from ListSource for our coaching company, so we just pass the savings on to our students. So we get it 3 cents, but we got it because we have a large group of people. So without the discount, I don't know what the price is, but it's, I don't know. It's first class. It's first class. Yeah. 100% first class. I just wanted to make sure I'm not going to give you misinformation. 100% first class. Yeah, go ahead.
So to send out so many, or get so many addresses to send out the postcards like that, how many sources are you pulling from to get that many?
So we have about 12 lists that we pull from. I'll give you a great list to pull from too, that nobody pulls from because it's too hard, but it's a great list, is garage sales on Craigslist. So what you do is go on garage sales and look up the addresses, and whenever you have an owner who has a different address, you can see this on the county, just hire a VA to do it. And what's so great about that is very often when there's an absentee owner's house who's having a garage sale, it's a lot of times the tenant who's having like a garage sale they're not supposed to be having with appliances, and your card is getting there right at the same exact time that they're just finding out that their tenant moved out and sold stuff they shouldn't have. So garage sales is a very small list, but it's a great list. I did a great deal on Luna Pizza. The owner in Connecticut had a house, and I was the only one who sent them a card. It was awesome. It's good stuff. But that's a great one. But yeah, I have about 12 lists that we pulled from. I gave you the best ones. Those are the best ones. Yes?
Have you found that an actual postcard is the best thing to send versus some companies that will let you do it? They say like brown envelopes more effective or whatever. you find that this postcard is most effective?
I do. There's a few things about postcards that I like. The letters get a high response rate, but I don't like a high response rate. I know that's very controversial and a lot of coaches will disagree with me, but I like the postcards because I want the people who call me to be calling me off of a postcard. And I don't need a 45-minute conversation, off of a letter. So the letters get a higher response rate. Anything in an envelope typically will get a higher response rate for sure. The only exception to the rule on that is the inheritance list with Lance and Terry. They do have a service where they do send out a handwritten card. I will say on some of those it is a little bit more effective. That's based not on my opinion but on the KPIs. Okay. So the letters on anything personal like that, like probates or inheritance, a letter can be a little bit more effective, but the list is so much smaller, right? So that's it's good stuff. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, go ahead. So we have, I do have a postcard that we have a few that we use. It's not in a sequence though. I know some people like the sequence, but something I learned from Michael Krol is that he believes, and Dan Kennedy thinks this too, is that it takes 8 touches. I don't really find that. I find that it's just, you get to a point where you're mailing so many people that they're just gonna eventually call you. I haven't measured like a count, like a touch count, but I can tell you that it's really more of a timing. So like for instance, we do deals all the time on the first mailing, all the time on a brand new list. So for instance, I just opened up like a new territory called Vero Beach, which is just north of me. First brand new mailings, we did deals. So the sequence is more of a question of if we see that there's a campaign that's failing, by after 2, we'll send it once, it fails. We'll send it again, it'll fail again. The third time, we'll change the postcard. We might make it pink, or there's also something called you're the friendly local investor, and then there's like the corporate postcard. Different people respond to it. Some people only respond to the postcards that say no one will answer the phone. So some particular sellers love that. We don't usually test it first, but it's usually like a third mailing. When you write no one will answer the phone, to hear our recorded message. Of course we're going to call them back immediately, but they love that. So you might want to try that if you're kind of struggling with a split test.
Okay, my second part of the question was for the KPI, are you putting different phone numbers on the cards? How do you know which?
Yes, I understand. Right, so how do I measure the campaigns? We have different phone numbers. Yeah, we used to use CallFire, now we use CallRail, it's better. And we have moved, and are any of you guys using CRMs in here? What are CRMs that you use? AlaREIA Pro. Anybody else? Zoho, I like that one. And which one? Podio, I like that one too. So here's what I'm going to say. The one that I recommend when you first get started is HighRise HQ. HighRise HQ. The reason is it's free, and it'll hold your first 250 contacts for free. I now use Podio, but I was in a meeting recently. It was in... I don't remember where it was, San Diego or somewhere, but I was in a meeting and someone said, I want to show, I know who it was. It was this guy, Dan, and he said, it was in San Diego, and he said, can you open up your Podio and show it to me? And I'm like, I have no idea. Like, can I open Podio? Like, no. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So here's the idea with CRMs. A lot of people, like the new wholesalers who are like, I know how to create a new field in Podio and move it around, huge red flag that they're not doing deals. Because, you need to be in front of sellers, not in front of your CRM. A CRM is made not to be in front of. That's the whole point, but people have this misconception about a CRM. It's supposed to keep you in the field in front of the seller. When I was doing it, I would have my VA, even with HighRise, she would take the phone call, put it into HighRise, and then she would send me an email on the road that would say the name, the telephone number, the address, and the Zillow link, and the property appraiser link of the property. Then I would call the seller, and then I would WhatsApp her back in the Philippines, and I would say, Lorena, on 123 Main Street, that's not a deal. Lorena, on 123 Main Street, send an offer for $160,000. Or Lorena, I'm going to see 123 Main Street tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So I never had to type anything. I never had to type anything, which was the key. So if you have a CRM, don't be in front of it. It's not made to sit in front of all day and move fields around. Huge red flag there. Any other questions at all? Or yeah, go ahead.
Do you automate your closing process?
When you say automate my closing process, how do you mean?
Well, a way to keep yourself from having to go to the closing outside of, I guess you have an acquisition manager?
I do. I don't go to the closings though. I don't do anything at all, honestly, in the business. Like, I mean, but I'm just honest. I really have almost nothing to do. Sometimes
Your acquisition manager does it all?
I have an acquisition manager. I have an assistant who kind of does it part-time. And then my title company is really well-trained. I have a really well-trained title company. You have to have a really well-trained title company. If you're bringing a title company tons and tons, like 100 deals a year, I guarantee you, you should have a local title company. Absolutely, of course, a local title company, and you should know the owner of your title company. You should have their cell phone number, and But if you're bringing 100 deals, they'll give you that. Go ahead.
What advice would you give? What I ran into was, okay, so you go out to look at the house. Somebody responds, you go out to look at the house, and you do a contract with the homeowner.
Okay.
Now you need to show it because you're trying to assign it to someone else. Well, they don't really trust you, so getting access to the property, you ask them for a lockbox, so a lot of times that doesn't work. So what advice would you give?
Okay, so let's slow down. Okay, so first of all, are you a real estate agent?
No.
Okay, so let's make this crystal clear. I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to tell you this. You absolutely cannot show a property if you do not own it. It is absolutely illegal. You cannot do it. So don't ever don't use the term, I lock up a property. Don't use the term, just say, I have a property under contract. If you're going to assign the contract, I'm going to sign the contract and I'm selling the contract. So you don't show a property. If you want to have an inspection for what's on the contract, that's fine. But don't say I do showings or anything like that. I don't mean to, I just want to not save you some grief later on. The other thing is, and I mean this in a very nice, loving way, it's just a failure of setting expectations with the seller. And a lockbox I never use. I've heard this before, people will put like a lockbox. I don't like, the reason you're putting a lockbox is probably because you have multiple people coming throughout like the week. Is that kind of, I wouldn't do that. All my sellers have to play by my rules. They come 2 o'clock, 2 to 2:30, boom, 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 it's done. Or the buyers. And you have 24 hours after that, and I don't want to hear anything about it, Once a time, no exceptions. No exceptions. As soon as you make one exception, you're done.
So what is that newbie thing? It's like, I can't make it this time, I can't make it this time, but you really want to get the deal done, so that's...
You don't have enough cash buyers. And tell them to send somebody else. And just say, you can't make it this time, I'll get you on the next deal. Yeah, that's just a failure of not having, when you have 150 cash buyers, you won't have that problem. Yeah, go ahead.
The escrow officer at the title company, you send him a lot of contracts. Does the escrow officer make a commission off of that? Or how does it work with the title company?
Right, so when you're saying, because I'm sending a lot of contracts to the title company. They don't make a commission, but they get a standard closing fee. Yeah, they get a standard closing fee. Yes. So Brian, is it an attorney state? By the way, when I need to wrap it up, you just let me know. Is it time? All right, let's do it. So yeah, but essentially they just get a normal closing. They just get a normal closing. So it's just whatever the closing fees are. Doc stamped, and I don't know if they call it a commission, but it's a fee. Yeah. So that's it, guys. That is my time. I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Awesome.